America doesn't care about where you were born. America doesn't care about where you came from. I mean, you think about once upon a time, these nail salons, there were no such thing as nail salons. Women just sat in their house and they did their nails. Then all of a sudden, women come here with nothing from a place called Vietnam. Yep. And they open up these businesses because they had a dream. And they knew that here, whatever dream they had, they could work towards it. And next thing you know, they've got second and third generation Harvard educated or Ivy League educated kids or what have you. But all because they said, I'm not going to be relegated to being a victim. I am in a country where I can rise up and be a victor. And I think that's really that turning point we're at right now in our country.
Alan West, how we doing today, bud?
I'm doing great, comrade. I can't thank you enough. And, of course, I got my great Make the Army Great Again hat.
We're going to talk a lot about the Army today, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
I love seeing you sport the merch that I'm pushing, but it's great stuff.
It is good stuff.
You're one about when you posted for the Vols. I mean, there were so many people who loved that stuff, man.
Well, and it was interesting because I didn't want to do it too soon because it was right before they played Oklahoma.
That's right.
And I was very nervous about, okay, I don't want to sport this hat. And they go up there and just get trounced by Oklahoma on national TV.
Right.
So, we did it the Sunday afterwards.
That's right.
And it
was a good turnout for you guys. Turned out pretty well.
It was, and I think we're going to be okay. We had a pure freshman, quarterback, and he learned. He's playing big boy football now.
He is. Well, and your basketball team looking pretty good.
Yeah, women and men.
That's right.
Women and men.
Well,
and
women there forever was.
Oh yeah, Pat Summitt.
Yeah, boy.
And the baseball team's doing well.
Oh yeah,
so got a little something going on.
I mean, something's going on in Knoxville these days.
Rocky Top. Yeah,
Rocky Top. I got to get out there for a game this year.
You and I got to go.
Yeah, we do need to do that. I'll look at the calendar and see.
There's no place like it.
Have you figured out when you're going to go this fall yet?
I normally always go in November around Veterans Day because that's when they have the Salute to Service weekend.
Got it.
And they have the military alumni come back.
Okay.
But it's just beautiful to be there, the Smoky Mountains in the background.
You got the river, right?
The river right there. And to watch the boats come in.
Yeah.
The Vol Navy, as they call it. It's a special place.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, thanks again for coming on. Let's just dive right in.
Yes, sir.
Born and raised in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's an incredible city. There's so much history there in Georgia. You didn't have to go into a book. I mean, you just had to go out on a field trip. And that was one of the things that I appreciated about, my dad, my family, was that, they took me to a lot of Civil War battlefields and got me to understand, that whole episode and the period of our life cycle as a constitutional republic.
Yeah.
But, you and I shared this. I was born in a segregated hospital in 1961 and grew up in the same neighborhood that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in. And my elementary school was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. And his boyhood home was right next to our playground. So his backyard, when you're playing kickball, if you had a good leg, you could kick it over the fence and it would be in his boyhood home's backyard. And just all of that history that surrounds you that you could study and understand. And, walking down Auburn Avenue, which was the cradle of the civil rights movement, and seeing the SCLC. And so it was very great for me to be born at that time and to be born in that area and to have two great parents that really set me on the course of where I am today.
Yeah. Let's talk about your folks a little bit. I mean, tell me about their backgrounds a little bit. I'd love because what shapes you today is usually your youth, right?
It is.
And so obviously you had two outstanding parents.
I did. I really did. Herman West Sr., his nickname was Buck West. He was born in Ozark, Alabama, and somehow got smart, jumped the Chattahoochee River, and spent his formative years in South Georgia. World War II veteran, corporal in the United States Army. My mom was born in Fort Valley, Georgia, Peach County, which is appropriate for the state of Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
And she served about 26 years civilian service with the 6th Marine Corps District Headquarters in Atlanta. Dad ended up being a nursing assistant and orderly with the VA hospital in Atlanta. So my whole life was about being around the military.
Yeah.
And it was just that discipline that they inculcated in you. But it was just those basic fundamentals of faith and family. Look, on Sunday, you woke up, you did your Sunday morning chores, you had breakfast, and then you went out to Sunday school.
That's right.
And it wasn't, I don't feel good, I'm sleeping in. No.
Yeah.
I couldn't carry a tune, but I was in the youth choir. Okay. And my mom did sing in the adult choir. And that didn't mean that you could act up because mom was up there. Because
That's right.
Every mama in the church could whip you.
That's right.
And it's just those simple things that, really help to form you. And they cared about education. I went to Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School, which was a Black Catholic school there. There were 3 or 4 in the entire city. I learned to write cursive before I hit the 1st grade.
Wow.
My mom was all about, your written communications and your oral communication. She was in Toastmasters.
Yeah.
So speaking proper English was very important. None of that ebonics stuff, that wasn't happening in our house. And they before I could, we would eat dinner, once I got to a certain age, I'd have to look at a story in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and take that story and summarize it for them before we would have dinner. And, I really became interested in math and all in numbers because my dad would sit down with me because we were big Atlanta Braves fans, Hank Aaron at the time. And he'd have me analyze, numbers. Okay, if Phil Niekro threw X amount of pitches in the game and X amount were strikes, what was his throwing strike percentage for that game or batting percentages? And so he got me interested in numbers. And then the next thing you know, I was reading the business section of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So it's just those little things that they did. But I tell you, Conrad, when you're sitting on the steps of your dad's house, and you're 15, and he looks at you and says, you're going to be the first officer in our family, because my older brother was an enlisted Marine in Vietnam. Yeah. That shaped me, and that set me on the course to where I am today.
Wow. So before you turned 15, did you think, I want to go into growing up, where you're like, that's the path I want to take?
Well, sure. I'll never forget my older brother. Mom sent him my measurements, and he got someone to make a Marine dress blue uniform for me, and I wore it to church on an Easter while he was deployed because I was so proud of him. Yeah. So that was always around me. Yeah. But when your dad says, I want to set this standard here. Yes. Because I went in as enlisted. Your older brother went in enlisted, but we want you to take it to the next level. Yeah. And that was special.
Were you able to do like junior ROTC at that Catholic school?
I did. Okay. Well, no, I did junior ROTC at Henry Grady High School. Okay. Started in the 10th grade. Yeah. And I'll never forget my Army ROTC instructors in high school. It was Lieutenant Colonel Pagonis, Major Heredia, Master Sergeant Buchanan, and Sergeant First Class McMichael. All of them were either Korea or Vietnam veterans. Some of them were both. Yeah. And Master Sergeant Buchanan was real special because he had been a POW. And to sit there and to hear the stories of him being in captivity, you just say, I wish I could have that type of character. Right. That measure of being a man. Yep. And I think that is really so important because I didn't have to look at a sports figure for a role model. Yeah. I mean, I had my dad. I had these guys that were there as my high school ROTC instructors that set that standard for me. And then, of course, you had all the men in the neighborhood and on the street. Yeah. My godfather, William Sticky Jackson, was a Tuskegee Airman. So incredible. It just doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, that young men and young women, you need to have those good role models in your life that will set a standard for you.
Yeah. And if they aren't there, you got to seek them out.
It's a void. And the thing is, as you know, the law of physics, if you create a void, something's going to fill that void.
Yeah.
And too often, if there's not something positive to fill that void, back in the day, it was the church. I mean, over summer, you went to church youth camp, and churches even had their own sports teams. You had church sports leagues, baseball, basketball.
Right.
If that is not there, then people gravitate to something negative. And that's where we have seen the rise of gangs and all of these things in the inner city communities.
Yeah. That's interesting. The lack of the church involvement, just in general, you don't even have to boil it down to the black community, the white community, the brown, just all over, right? I just don't feel like in general Christianity or religion is as prevalent as it was when
I think it's making a comeback. Yeah. I really do. But you're right, because once upon a time, if there was someone in the neighborhood or community struggling, the church stepped up.
Yeah.
And they did what was necessary to help people make that bill, or to make sure that their cupboard was full with food.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, again, when you create that void, guess what ended up filling it? Government and things of this nature, which creates that dependency society.
Yep.
And I think that that's a real tough cycle to break. I think we're trying to get there, but it's a tough cycle to break.
What's the best way to break it?
Education.
Yeah.
I think education creates opportunities. Opportunities creates individual empowerment.
Yep.
And it enables you to really be someone that can serve and give back, instead of looking at how someone can serve me.
Yep.
You got to give them individual responsibility and accountability. I think you and I were talking about it maybe, but my dad never gave me an allowance. When I became of age, my dad gave me the lawnmower, and he gave me a water hose and a bucket.
That's right.
And a sponge and rags. And he said, there are a lot of cars on the street. There are a lot of yards on the street. Go figure it out. Well, I did. And, when you had other folks that were on that street trying to cut, then I said, well, I'm going to learn how to edge grass even better. I got an edger, or I got the clippers, and you get out there. That was before you had the electric.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
You get out there.
The hand
clipper.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, man.
And you took pride in that stuff.
For sure.
And so I think that's what we need to do, is teaching young kids to go out there and, be a little business entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because when I hear about folks coming out and shutting down a kid's lemonade stand because they don't have a permit.
Oh, boy. How un-American is that?
Totally. And what are you teaching them?
I love lemonade stands.
Absolutely.
I will go out of my way to go to lemonade stand. I don't even want the product. I just want to, I go in there and I try to tell the kids, hey, keep this up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you take this approach to life, right, you go out there, and I just think it's great. They're learning interpersonal skills. They're learning how to sell. They're learning the value of money.
Yes.
I love lemonade stands.
Responsibility. And I think that is what is lost when you have the welfare nanny state, the dependency society, regardless, like you say, of the demographic.
Yeah.
It takes away that drive and determination that I think is innate in each and every one of us.
I look back at, and it goes back to education and also like exposure, right? And like, I go back to where I grew up, and I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley, which is notoriously the poorest region in the entire United States, right? And
worse than Appalachia?
It's bad.
Wow.
Yeah, it's usually the worst down there on the border. Yeah. And but for me, I grew up in Tom Landry's hometown, right? And so every day we'd drive by that mural, and I'd see Tom up there and the Dallas Cowboys star. And just for me as a kid, it represented something bigger, something greater. And the fact that if that guy who grew up in the same town as me is now in Dallas, which to me at the time was like
light years away.
Yeah. but now he's the coach of the greatest football team in the world, right? If he can make it, then I certainly can do that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to me, that's the biggest thing is like kids just need exposure. If you're in areas that are blighted or, tough environments, you just got to dream bigger than what you see on the streets or in your neighborhood.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring up, you being brought up in the same hometown as Tom Landry because, I told you I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan, down in southern Afghanistan, based out of Kandahar. And I'll never forget the time when we rolled out of the gates because I was a mentor to the Afghan army down there, and we were going to visit a unit. And we're driving through, and I look over, and what do I see? I see a little Afghan boy with a Dallas Cowboys T-shirt.
Yeah.
And so that man that came from your hometown had such an impact and created such an aura that a kid in Afghanistan knew what that Lone Star represented.
Right.
And so we never know how we're going to impact people. And the greatness of America, Conrad, is that America doesn't care about where you were born. America doesn't care about where you came from. I mean, you think about once upon a time, these nail salons, there were no such thing as nail salons. Women just sat in their house and they did their nails. Then all of a sudden, women come here with nothing from a place called Vietnam. Yep. And they open up these businesses because they had a dream. And they knew that here, whatever dream they had, they could work towards it.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they've got second and third generation Harvard educated or Ivy League educated kids or what have you.
Yep.
But all because they said, I'm not going to be relegated to being a victim. I am in a country where I can rise up and be a victor. And I think that's really that turning point that we're at right now in our country. Do we still want to see ourselves as victims? Do we still want to have people kicking sand in our faces, when you go to the beach and the big tough guy kicks?
Yeah.
No, that's America. That's not, especially in Texas.
Right.
Up there you got that picture of, that Tennessee hero, Davy Crockett.
That's right.
Nobody in Texas wants to have sand kicked in their face.
No.
And that's the aura, once again, that we have to have permeating throughout this country.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's certainly all about dreaming bigger, doing bigger things. We talked about it a little bit when we were at lunch earlier. The people that immigrate here versus are born here, sadly, the people that are born here a lot of times take everything for granted. And the people that immigrate here, they're like, boy, I left this horrible socialistic, communistic country, and I can come here, and if I just work hard, I can advance in this society.
Yeah.
Right?
I can have a nice big house.
Right.
I don't have to live in an apartment. I mean, I don't have to worry about going to a grocery store on certain days to get my bread rationed within a certain.
Right.
I can speak.
Yes.
I can go out and worship as always. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
But then yet we have young people in this country that we've seen over the past year and a half out protesting and supporting a terrorist organization.
Right.
How sick is that?
Right.
And so somehow, some way, there's been a breakdown where we did not continue to tell the story about this country, or the exceptionalism, the blessings that you have here.
Right.
We have allowed people in our institutions of quote unquote education to say that this is what America is. America was founded in 1619. Forget all that July the 4th, 1776 stuff.
Yep.
This is insanity. But again, I think that you can push people so far, and definitely Americans. You can push Americans so far, and then they say enough.
Yep.
And I think that that's where we are right now.
So you grew up in Atlanta in the 60s, 70s.
Mm-hmm.
How does that neighborhood look today?
Well, now it's become gentrified. A lot of people have moved in. I mean, my old boyhood home, my younger brother sold it. That's a point of contention. Okay. You can't go back home. But he sold it, and that street, which used to be a street full of, lower middle income black families, but they were families.
Yeah.
Now it's, kind of your yuppie. I don't know if they still say yuppie now, but it's the yuppie crew.
Okay.
There used to be the Southeast Distribution Center for Sears and Roebucks, and that was where I had my first job.
Wow.
Well, that's gone, and now it's all a bunch of loft apartments and everything like that. Back in the day, the old Atlanta Crackers played baseball down at the Ponce de Leon Stadium. I mean, that's gone, and all of those places, again, loft apartments and things of that nature. I go by my old high school, and it's no longer Henry Grady High School because Henry Grady was quote unquote a racist, whatever, and so now it's Midtown High School. So a lot of things have changed, but those businesses that I saw on Auburn Avenue, Sweet Auburn, what they used to call it, black-owned businesses, doctors, lawyers' offices, Citizens Trust Bank, black-owned bank. A lot of those things gone away because somehow it just stopped. It just ended. My elementary school is now a community center. So that incredible, black Catholic school that put out so many great young kids is gone now. And so it is very troubling when you don't see that torch that's being passed to subsequent generations.
So where did those folks go?
Well, I guess they're relegated to whatever is there.
Yeah.
And that's sad because I think that, again, when you talk about education, that unlocks the doors of opportunity.
Yes.
And everyone should have the opportunity to get a quality education. And we're wrestling with that definition of school choice.
Sure.
And I told folks, my parents had school choice. They chose where I would go. But what do we want to have happen is we want to enable people to have freedom in selecting education for their kids. And I think that we've seen a Department of Education at the federal government level, which is unconstitutional. I mean, it only got created because the teachers' unions wanted Jimmy Carter to do it. Even here in Texas, we have the Texas Education Association. But what's happening with the standards of education? And when you look at, Dallas, we're talking about the stock exchange is going to be moving here.
Yep.
All the technology platforms that are moving here into Texas. We've got to start preparing young people to participate in these booming industries that make Texas such a great place to be in. And so, again, how do you break that cycle? It comes back to education because education economically empowers you. It gives you that opportunity instead of being economically enslaved.
Yep. All right. So we graduate high school.
Yep.
We join the ROTC. We go to Knoxville.
Go to the University of Tennessee. Yeah.
Tell me about that time period of going to Tennessee.
Boy, I tell you, it was something else when all of a sudden your parents take you, drop you off at the dorm, and they say goodbye. It's like, there's nobody here to tell me what to do.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And that's that decisive moment in your life when are you going to be responsible for yourself?
Yep.
No one's going to tell you get up out of this bed in this dorm room. No one's going to tell you to go to class.
Right.
You've got to discipline yourself in doing that. And they're paying for you to come here to get this education. They sacrifice.
Yep.
And so that was an important decision to make because I saw a lot of my friends didn't make it. And, I was not a stellar athlete. I was there at the same time. Willie Galt was there. Bill Bates was there.
Oh, yeah.
Reggie White was there. Dale Ellis was there.
Wow.
There were some studly, football and basketball, track athletes there at University of Tennessee. I went there to get an education, get my commission, and get gone, as my dad would say. And so, again, it was so important that I had the right type of mentors that were at the college ROTC program. Vietnam veterans, special operators, Rangers that kept me on the right track. And I had good friends who are still friends of mine to this day. We were, cadets together. We served on active duty together. But it was an important time for me to step up and say, am I going to honor my parents and what they have raised me to be, or will I dishonor them? Because my mom said, number one, people will know you by the company that you keep. And number two, never do anything that you don't want to see on the front page of a newspaper. So I kind of got it.
Yeah.
And so it was tough because, I thought I was going to be an engineer because my
what did you get your degree in?
It's political science.
Political science.
Political science. And it worked out well for me.
Yeah.
Engineering was not my thing. Love numbers, but engineering was not my thing.
Yeah.
I really like to think and reason and understand things. And it helped because if you're going into the military, you're going to be going to different countries. You need to understand different political systems and things of that nature. So graduated in 4 years, got my degree, got my commission, and headed off to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, just right up the road in Lawton, Oklahoma.
So tell me about your journey throughout the Army. I mean, obviously.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I know that's a broad stroke. I mean, how long did you stay in there?
22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
Rised all the way to lieutenant colonel. Unbelievable. Who was the most impactful person for you?
Well, it started out with my dad.
Well,
without a doubt.
In your time during the Army.
Well, I just want to say, I'll never forget the day that I took off, leaving from Atlanta to drive out here to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And Dad looked at me, and I'd never seen the man cry or get emotional in my life. The day that he pinned on my second lieutenant bars, he had tears in his eyes because, he realized that I fulfilled the dream that he set out for me. But he told me before I got in the car to come out to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, he said, look here, Lieutenant, there's one thing you must always do. You must always take care of your troops. And that was just something that was ingrained in me, that it's not about you. It's not about having people serve you. It's about making sure that you're doing what's right by your men and by your troops.
Yeah.
And so that stuck with me. But I had a couple of outstanding commanders. John R. Gingrich, Texas A&M grad.
Okay.
And he was my battalion commander during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And we used to call him the G-Man. I mean, this guy was hard as woodpecker lips in the wintertime. I mean, daggum G-Man. And you could tell when he was about to go off because his ears would start to get red.
Yeah.
And then his face would get flushed red.
Right.
And then he would just lay into you. But the thing with the G-Man that I respected was that he told you what he expected of you.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do it, then you got flamed. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
And I respected that. And I think the reason why, I got along with him because, yes, sir, salute the flag, drive on, go make it happen.
Right.
And he, to this day, I mean, we still keep in contact. The other person was Denny R. Lewis. He was my brigade commander at Fort Bragg. And again, just a stud guy. I mean, here's a guy who went through Delta Force selection and made it, but decided he would just, continue to be an artillery paratrooper officer. But again, just a tough guy. And his motto for our brigade, our artillery brigade, the 18th Field Artillery Brigade Airborne, which was the largest artillery unit in the Army at the time, 2,200 soldiers, tough, proud, discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just very simple. Tough, proud, discipline. I got it. Go out there and do your mission. Know your task and purpose every day. So Lieutenant Colonel, he ended up retiring as a colonel. John R. Gingrich and Colonel Denny R. Lewis, those are the two guys, without a doubt, just really, set me on the right path. And those words of my dad about taking care of your troops, that stuck with me every single day.
So when you hear that from your dad, is this like, when you're approaching, I'm going to make military my career. Did you think that?
I didn't.
Okay, you didn't.
I didn't at first.
At first.
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to serve my time and see where it happens.
Yeah.
But then you obviously decide, well, let's make a career out of this.
And that was because of Colonel Gingrich when I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. Because, your first tour of duty is in Vicenza, Italy. I mean, Italy. In an airborne unit. I mean, how good can it get?
Yeah, that's not bad.
That ain't bad.
That's not bad.
And then the Army, in all of its great wisdom, the next assignment was in Fort Riley, Kansas. And I'm thinking, Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm from Georgia. I went to school in Tennessee. Why couldn't y'all send me to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is just north of Nashville? Why couldn't Fort Stewart, Georgia?
I mean, even Fort Hood would have been better.
But Kansas. And I'm sitting in Kansas. Ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
Because of Colonel Gingrich, Met my wife, Angela, who was a business professor at Kansas State University. Had both our daughters there.
My uncle was a JAG guy at Fort Riley way back in the day. Yeah.
Big Red One.
Yeah, Big Red One.
You know, went to combat with them, and all of a sudden, life changed. And so I said, yeah, we're going.
So when you go to Fort Riley, is that how you met your wife?
Yeah, that's how I met her at Fort Riley, Manhattan, Kansas, Little Apple.
Kansas. It's right around the corner, right? It's not too far away, right?
No, it's right there.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I lived in Manhattan, Kansas, you know, and, you know, would drive over to Fort Riley because, you know, it was a little bit better over there. A little bit better.
What was your favorite thing about being in the Army? I mean, like
soldier humor.
Soldier humor.
Soldier humor.
Gotta be.
Man, you could be out there. It's freezing to death, or it's raining, it's cold, you're hungry, whatever, and they can just crack some jokes like you never heard before in your life. Yeah, I was sharing with you at lunch, you know, when we were over in Iraq, and, you know, guys would go out and get into a firefight, whatever, and, you know, they come back and you have to have the debriefing and everything, because you always want to talk about your lessons learned.
Sure.
And I remember one of the debriefings, you know, guys stood up there and they saying, yeah, and I capped the Fedayeen guy, the insurgent guy, got a headshot on him, and somebody said, "Man, that had to have hurt."
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
you think?
Yeah, you think. And so it's just that incredible humor, or, you know, like I said, you know, when I use the term "stuck on stupid," you know, that's soldier humor.
Yeah.
And so and you have to have that, because when you're out there in some really tough situations and you're uncertain about your own survival, you got to be able to reach down somewhere deep below and just be able to get that belly laugh. Get that belly laugh.
Have a little humor. Speaking of tough situations, is there a story you'd share about a tough situation?
Well, I think everyone knows about the decision that I made that some people say that ended my career, but, you know, I thought that it was a very trying moment for me when we had an Iraqi police officer that we found out was leaking some information to bad guys, and we saw the IED attacks kind of spike in our area. We got him and brought him in, and he was being very belligerent with our quote-unquote interrogators. We were given 2 female interrogators. In the Middle East, that doesn't work very well. No. So I just decided to use a psychological intimidation trick.
Right.
And I went down and told him that, you know, I was, you know, if he didn't talk, I was going to just take him out and put a bullet in his head. No intentions of doing so.
Right.
But I wanted him to believe that I was capable of doing so, and maybe he'd be forthcoming. He kept stalling and what have you. And so I said, okay, last chance. And so we went out, and I fired my pistol over his head into a weapons clearing barrel, a big barrel of sand. And he, you know, came forth with some information, and we saw things, you know, go back down again. And when I was asked about it, I was very forthcoming. And it was a decision that we're going to remove you from command, and we are going to maybe look at court-martialing you and sending you to Fort Leavenworth for 8 years in prison. Yeah. And that was very tough, because all of a sudden, here was a kid that since the age of 15 has been wearing a uniform, and now the thing that he loves so dearly, they're saying that they're going to send him to jail. And I just prayed and said, you know, Lord, your will be done, because I'm just turning it over to you. And everything just kind of went away. I was given what they call non-judicial punishment, fined $5,000. And when I got back from Iraq, and I was down at Fort Hood, you know, I asked my wife, I said, what do you think? What do you want to do? Because her dad was 24 years in the military, 2 combat tours of duty in Vietnam, infantryman. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. And she said, you know, I think that the military is going in a different direction. And you have reached a pinnacle of being with men in combat. Let's be a family. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'll put in my retirement paperwork, 22 years. It's been great. And let's just be a good husband and a good dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you at peace with that today?
Very much so. And the reason why you're at peace is because you still get phone calls and text messages and emails from my men. Yeah. Because I did what my dad said.
Yeah.
You've got to take care of your men.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. That, and whether you're a CEO in the civilian sector or whatever, it's about taking care of your folks.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you take care of your folks, they're going to make sure you're successful.
Amen.
They're going to make sure your business thrives. They're going to talk about you well, out and about.
They're loyal.
They're loyal, and people are going to want to come be a part of your organization.
That's right.
And that's what leadership is.
Yeah. Well, and you're still jumping out of planes.
Still jumping out of planes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, last summer, got the opportunity to go back over to Normandy for D-Day, 80th anniversary, and jumped out twice. And I have my annual airborne training down in Florida next month, March.
That's so cool.
It's awesome.
That's so cool. Talk briefly about your D-Day experience last year. I mean, how was?
You just can't put it into words. Almost.
I mean, that's a place I need to visit someday.
Every American should be there on the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah,
and just understand what 17 and 18-year-olds did for liberty and freedom. Not for themselves, but for liberty and freedom. And so when you watch a movie like Saving Private Ryan,
yep,
and then you go and you get to be at Dog Sector Beach there on Omaha Beach,
yep,
and you look up at those cliffs where the Germans were firing down on them, and you just say, what manner of men were these? Or you're on a C-47 airplane that actually flew 80 years ago with those paratroopers.
Yeah.
And even though you're jumping in the middle of the day, you don't have 200 pounds of gear on you and everything, you're still just overtaken with emotion when you land on a drop zone that they landed on 80 years ago.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night.
Right.
And when you hit the ground and you have kids running out to hug you and to say thank you in English, I mean, you're bawling.
Wow.
You're absolutely bawling because those kids are still honoring what happened 80 years ago.
Yeah.
And then you think about, okay, what's going on in my own country? How many kids even know 6 June 1944?
All right. I know. Take it for granted. A lot of people take it all for granted.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy when people, talk negatively about the flag or not standing for the national anthem. That stuff just drives me insane.
At our nation's capital, young people rip down the American flag and burn it, and they raise the flag of a terrorist organization.
Right.
That a year previous had just killed Americans. Right. Still holding Americans hostage.
Yeah.
And you just scratch your head and say, how did we get to this point?
Yeah.
And again, I think it comes back to the education. It comes back to the household.
Yep.
And what are parents doing with their kids?
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's headed the right direction now.
I think so. I really do. You get that sensing that it is.
Yeah. I think a lot of people got fed up and just the stupidity that's just been kind of going on.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been a lot of awakening, I think, over the last 4 years. So
there are things that work and things that don't work.
Yeah. So we get out of the military.
Yep.
What do you think you want to do next? Did you have any idea?
I knew that I had to give back.
Okay.
That was important. And like I said, my wife, the brilliant one, she got offers from Raymond James. So, and she's originally from Jamaica.
Yep.
So we went to South Florida.
Was she born in Jamaica?
She was born in Jamaica.
No kidding.
She still has that patois, thing going on. And
she's probably a hell of a cook too.
A hell of a cook. And when she gets mad at you, just make sure all sharp objects are hidden. Because she will machete you, man. To get the machete. So we go down to South Florida, and I joined a program called Troops to Teachers.
Okay.
And I become a high school teacher at Deerfield Beach High School in Deerfield Beach, Florida. I was also the track coach there. But it was such an enjoyable experience, Conrad, that I went back to Afghanistan, and that's where I spent 2.5 years as a mentor to the Afghan Army, because I just didn't want to keep putting my head against the wall.
Yeah.
Because I just saw a system that was failing kids.
Yep.
I got tired of breaking up fights, every day. And then the unfortunate day came when a kid took a swing at me when I was breaking up a fight. And there's a certain thing that just kind of triggers in you if you are a combat veteran.
Yep.
And I could have very severely hurt that young man. And that's when I came home and told my wife, I probably, don't need to.
Teaching is not.
Yeah, it's not the right place for me until we get kids to respect authority.
Yeah.
And so, spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan. Then came back and someone said, we know who you are. We know your reputation. We would like for you to run for Congress.
Yeah.
Here in South Florida. And I was like, do I look like I have an L across my forehead? I mean, because, military guys, we really don't like politicians.
Yeah.
We just don't. And, when you have to be an escort officer for a politician, a member of Congress visiting, it's not because your commander likes you, it's because he's punishing you.
Right.
So,
right.
But, the first time, 2008, came really close to defeating an incumbent guy, 45.3%. And people said, do it again. In 2010, we won.
Yeah.
And so I spent a term in Congress. And what an incredible experience, to go from a battlefield to a different kind of battlefield. But you're still honoring your oath to the Constitution. That's what meant so much to me.
How was that experience, like serving in Congress?
What I tell folks is that in the morning when I would get up out of my little basement hooch and go for a run at like 5:30, and you turn the corner, you see the Capitol in that early light.
Yeah.
It just gives you a sense of pride to say that I'm inside there doing the business of legislating and governing for my country.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Or when you're back in the home district and someone comes up to you in the grocery store or whatever and says, hey, I'm having this problem, Congressman. You don't say, well, you're a Republican or Democrat. You say, okay, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And it's about serving folks. But there's a cabal in politics. And if you're outside that cabal or the club, whatever you call it, people don't want you around. And so I actually had Republicans that drew me out of the district that I was representing. And still with that, we lost our reelection race by like 0.46%.
Oh.
So it was something else. But, God closes a door because he's going to open up a better one. And the next thing you know, I get the opportunity to come back to Texas.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm the executive director for the American Constitutional Rights Organization, Union, and again, still honoring my oath to the Constitution, which is a great thing. And I'm the chairman for the Dallas County Republican Party, and I have been the chairman for the Republican Party of the state of Texas.
Yep.
And none of it, and again, if I had not taken the action that I took in 2003 in Iraq and put me on a different course, maybe you and I would not be sitting here.
That's right. God works in mysterious ways.
He does work in mysterious ways, and we just need to be obedient.
Well, the things that you're doing here in Dallas County are vastly needed. So I appreciate all the things that you are doing.
Thanks.
Because this is, unfortunately, everybody thinks of Texas and they're like, well, it's completely red state and so on and so forth. And, I obviously grew up in an area that was Democratic blue for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Until recently.
Until November.
November.
Mm-hmm.
I told the story about my grandmother. She's 93 now. And she finally saw Hidalgo County turn red for the first time in her life. You know, and she was like precinct chairman, Hidalgo County chairman, all those things growing up. And growing up, all she did was lose. Every time I'd be like, how'd we do? Well, we didn't win locally, but we won statewide. We won, and to finally see it flip the other way, now we're trying to do the same thing here in Dallas County.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's one of the great successes you saw in November 2024. 12 of 14 border counties went red in the state of Texas because those policies are failing and people want to be safe and secure. And when you look at all the major urban population centers here in Texas, your Dallas, your Austin, your Houston, your San Antonio, El Paso, they're all blue.
Yep.
And that is the blueprint of the left. is to come into a red state and take over the major population centers, and becomes a numbers game.
Right.
Because you're not regenerating enough population in East Texas or West Texas.
That's right.
Everyone is coming here right along the I-35 corridor and, of course, down in Houston.
Yep.
And they believe that eventually we can tip this state. So when you hear about the business opportunities that are here in Dallas or in Texas, period, when you're Chevron and you're moving here, when you're the New York Stock Exchange Chicago branch, and now you're going to move here to Dallas, you got to understand why you come here to Texas.
Yeah.
And you can't have those same policies that you're escaping from.
Yep.
You want to bring them with you, to the folks in California, the folks in Illinois that are leaving, that's it, in Chicago, they're leaving. Understand and study Texas history. 2 days ago was February 24th. And that means that 189 years ago, William Barrett Travis wrote that infamous letter from the Alamo.
Yeah.
Now, how many people that we have coming here recently to Texas have read? That's my point.
Yeah.
And so if they don't understand that Texas exceptionalism, they just say, I'm coming to Texas because I get better tax rates, or the houses are cheaper than where I just came from. Then you're missing out on what Texas really is. And so I think it's important in a place like Dallas that we start telling that story and getting people to understand what makes us unique, and not have us going down the path where we end up looking like a city in California. Look at Colorado. Colorado used to be a solid red state.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, people started leaving California, going into Colorado, to the point where now they just voted that no one can have a semi-automatic weapon in the state of Colorado. They passed that in the House and the Senate, and that knucklehead they have, Jared Polis, who I serve with in Congress as the governor, I guarantee he signs it. So basically what the legislators, the leftist legislators in Colorado are saying that you can only have a revolver. Now, obviously they have not read the Second Amendment.
Right.
Shall not be infringed.
Right.
So don't come here and tell me how many bullets I can have, or I can only have a revolver. If I'm a legal law-abiding citizen, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, go out there and get all these Trinidad members who somehow have been able to get weapons.
Yep.
But I think that's what we have to do, is to put that line in the sand like Travis did at the Alamo and say, if you want to be a part of this great experience in Texas, you want to be a part of this great experience in America, then this is the side that you need to stand on.
Yep. If you want freedom.
If you want freedom, if you want your businesses to thrive and grow. I mean, how stupid can you be to leave a state that basically screwed you over and then come to a new state that gives you opportunity and bring the same stupidity?
That's right.
Remember I said that's stuck on stupid.
Yes, it is. So what do you think are some of the, since there's going to be a lot of Dallas people listening to this, what are some of the things that need to be fixed in Dallas County?
First and foremost, you got to fix this city council. This city council is it's an abomination.
It is. You're right.
I don't know how I can't, I'm sure it's a family oriented program, but when people don't care about your safety and security,
right,
they got to go.
Yeah.
When you have an interim police chief here in Dallas who says, I'm not going to work with ICE, when you know that there are violent Venezuelan gang members in the city of Dallas.
That's right.
That's got to go. Who's in charge of that guy? The city manager. Who's in charge of the city manager? City council. So municipal level elections, people need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And so often, no one cares about municipal elections. They can tell you everything about Donald Trump. They can't tell you about they can't tell you about who's their school board member, who's their city council, member. They need to start understanding, paying attention. 6 to 8% showing up for a municipal election, that has to stop.
Yep.
School board, you want to know why, our kids are not reading and doing math at grade level? Because, Marxists are in charge of the school board.
That's right.
So get some quality people to run.
Yep.
You want to know why we have, criminals running around all over the place in Dallas? Because you got a district attorney that says, $750 or less, I'm not going to prosecute them. $750 is a lot of money to me. Maybe not to John Crusoe, but it is to me.
Yeah.
So we got to get people to be concerned about
Do we got some good, do you know some good ones that
Absolutely.
come out?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
And so I think that we have a good slate of candidates for Dallas City Council that people can select from. And just don't expect the same old status quo.
No. Well, me as a business guy, right, and in commercial real estate, if you're trying to develop a project here in DFW, and your options, you live in Garland, and your options are, do I want to go develop in the city of Dallas, or do I want to go to Garland or Plano or Richardson or Mesquite, any of those? Dallas would be the last place you'd want to mess with. Because it's so hard to get rezoning done. It's so hard to get your permitting done. There's just nothing downtown that works properly. Whereas these other cities would welcome you with open arms, and they'd tell you, oh yeah, we'll get this done and we'll get it on the ballot. We'll expedite it. And you'll have your building permit in a month and blah, 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 all these things. And that's the same attitude that those suburban towns, that has to get back to downtown Dallas. Yeah. If it doesn't, it's just going to continue to crumble.
Dallas is bleeding population.
Yeah.
Because people are going out to those areas. And, you talk about a stock exchange coming here. Well, what's going to be the infrastructure support? What type of, environment for the businesses that will come that are collateral affected by those, that stock exchange coming here?
Yeah.
And the homeless situation is out of control.
I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Shouldn't be that way.
No.
Your number one thing is safety and security of people, and provide them the atmosphere and set the conditions for their economic success. I will tell you that I don't want to see a casino here in Dallas, because we are in a city that's in the top 5 for sex trafficking in the entire country. And I think that will just exacerbate that issue. And especially if you have a police chief that does not want to deal with a Venezuelan gang that, features sex trafficking of young girls as one of their priority endeavors.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems that are coming out of Central and South America and Mexico, and that could be a topic for a whole nother day. But
but that's getting corrected too.
Yeah, I hope it's on the horizon, but it's definitely getting corrected at the border. That's for sure. We talked about that at lunch. What are the border crossings down to now?
Down to less than 200 a day, when it used to be tens of thousands a day.
Unbelievable.
Just enforce the law.
Yeah,
that's all you got to do.
Not that hard to do.
No.
We're going to close next what I call the C-suite closers. These are just like quick hitting questions for people that get to know you. Here's one interesting one. What is something that most people don't know about Alan West?
I'm an introvert.
Really?
My Myers-Briggs profile is ISTJ. You saw I'm, on my motorcycle, back riding again after that accident 4.5, almost 5 years ago. But I like to get out and be alone. I like to get up at 5:30 in the morning, go for a nice morning run, just the peace and the quiet. I love to scuba dive, because if you try to talk to me, you'll drown. And so I just love the quiet time. It's very good for me. So I'm an introvert at heart.
I think I have a lot of those same tendencies as well. And I think some of it's because I run so hard in the business world, and then I'm talking to people all day long, working on deals, things of that nature. I'm on all day long. And then when I get home, I'm just like, decompress. But I really like peace and quiet. It's funny, if my wife ever takes the kids and goes out of town to go visit her sister or something like that, most people are like, oh, well, I'll go out tonight and go out with the boys. Dude, I just sit at home. Yeah. And I just listen to the quiet.
Yes.
It's amazing.
I think there was a song by Depeche Mode called Enjoy the Silence.
Yes. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
What's the most impactful book that you've ever read besides the Bible? Because a lot of people say Bible.
Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington, his autobiography. Because I believe in life you can be a victor or a victim. He chose to be a victor and not a victim, even though, he was born into slavery. Yeah. He became, I think, one of the greatest educators that this country has ever produced. So Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington.
I'm going to have to read that one. That is great. What's your top 3 musicians or bands on your Spotify playlist? What are you rocking to?
Rush.
Okay.
I miss Neil Peart, one of the greatest rock drummers ever.
Yep.
The Police.
Okay.
And I would say little Aerosmith.
Little Aerosmith. Okay. So you like the rock.
I do like. I mean, Sirius XM 25, 80s rock is my favorite station. Then after that, I would say contemporary Christian and then classical.
No country in there at all.
I can take country.
Okay.
I mean, and I grew up with hardcore country, coming,
sure.
out of Georgia and Tennessee, but
right.
I can take, some modern contemporary country.
Okay. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
Well, first of all, I'm not a coffee drinker. The British spoiled me, and I'm an Earl Grey tea fanatic.
Tea okay.
And I would, without a doubt, sit down with George Washington, because what he did, that's the embodiment of leadership.
Yep. That would be awesome. If you could live anywhere else in the world besides the glorious Dallas-Fort Worth area, where would you live?
East Tennessee.
Really?
I go back to Rocky Top in a heartbeat.
Interesting.
There's just something about the Smoky Mountains and that area that I just absolutely love.
How far was that from Atlanta when you grew up?
As the crow flies, it's a 45-minute flight. But because of the mountains, you have to cut over to Chattanooga, and then you cut back up to Knoxville. So my homeroom teacher was a University of Tennessee grad, and at the time, they had one of the best Army ROTC programs in the country. And today, they have the largest Army ROTC.
I did not know that.
We have a larger program than Notre Dame.
Wow.
Yep.
Favorite restaurant in Dallas?
Waffle House. Hey, you can laugh all you want, man. I don't care. I love Waffle House.
Which one you go to all the time?
Well, there's one in Garland, but I love Waffle House. And it's born in Georgia. Look,
simple things.
I'm a simple man.
Yeah,
I'm such a simple man.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you do a lot of giving back and charitable work and things of that nature. Like which one are you most passionate about?
My warrior brothers.
Yeah.
We are still losing 20 to 22 veterans on average per day to suicide.
Golly.
And last week I was down in Florida, supporting an organization that brings in wounded warriors and their spouses. And some of them have both served, the husband and the wife, because they're struggling. Yeah. Through some that invisible enemy that still tries to take them down. So anytime I can give back to my warrior brothers and sisters, I will.
That's so awesome. What's the future look like for Alan West?
Whatever God would say. I tell people Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 6. If you trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not upon your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, he'll guide your path.
That's a beautiful way to end this podcast, buddy.
It's been a pleasure to be with you, Conrad.
Man, I appreciate you taking the time. It really means a lot.
My time is your time. Look forward to doing it again.